Hello, sleepy soul. The night is quiet, the world is asleep, and something is waiting in the dark. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and write your country and current time in the comments. Now listen carefully. Have you ever started a new job and felt wrong, even before your first day? Not just nervous, something deeper like a shadow brushing your mind. But you tell yourself it's normal. That's how it began for me, and I wish I'd listened to that gut feeling. My name's Daniel. I was 24 at the time, living in a small flat in central London. I'd just landed a job at a mid-sized marketing firm near Holborn. Nothing fancy, nothing that should have worried me. I'd worked in offices before, and this one seemed perfectly ordinary. Rows of cubicles, fluorescent lights, the smell of coffee that lingered all day. Life was mundane, safe, predictable. At least, that's what I thought. They assigned me Desk 47 on my first day. Desk 47 was at the far end of the office, near a wall of windows that looked out over the street. The view was decent, street lamps casting weak circles of light, the occasional taxi passing, but the desk itself felt off. I didn't know why at first. It was clean, tidy, perfectly normal. Yet, when I sat there and looked around, I had this fleeting sensation, like someone had been staring at me from across the room moments before I arrived. I brushed it off. First day nerves. That's all it was. The first week went by normally. Meetings, introductions, the hum of printers, the soft clack of keyboards. My coworkers were polite, friendly even. But Desk 47 had a strange energy. Every day when I opened my computer, I'd find emails in my inbox addressed to me, but from a sender I didn't recognize. The subject lines were always the same. Reminder, 11:47 p.m. At first, I ignored them. Spam probably. IT would sort it out eventually. But on Friday, curiosity got the better of me. I opened one. Do not leave your desk tonight. It's not safe, the email read. No signature, no sender address, just that line. I laughed nervously. Okay, very funny, I muttered aloud. Maybe one of my co-workers was trying to scare me. But no one looked over, no one smiled. The office was empty except for me. The next night I worked late. The glow of my monitor was the only light in the office. Around 11:47, a new email popped up, same subject. I hesitated, fingers hovering over the mouse. Then I clicked, and there it was, a live feed, from a camera I didn't know existed, focused on me, sitting at Desk 47, staring back at myself through my own screen. My heart sank into my stomach as I leaned back, eyes wide, shaking. My mind raced. Security cameras? IT testing something? But no, I'd never seen this camera before. It was positioned so perfectly, so intimately, that it felt like someone was inside the room with me watching. I told myself it was a glitch, a prank, maybe a misconfigured security feed. I closed the laptop, forced myself to laugh, and went home. But that's when things started to escalate. The emails kept coming. Every night, 11:47 sharp, each one more urgent. Sometimes a warning, sometimes just my name, typed over and over. I tried to ignore them. I even switched desks once, but Desk 47 seemed to call me back. I'd come in the next morning, and the emails would be there, waiting unopened. Then one night, I stayed late again. The office was silent, the hum of the HVAC system the only background noise. Around 11:47, my laptop pinged. I froze. Another live feed. Only this time, the camera showed my flat. My bedroom. My bed. And there I was asleep, just hours earlier in my own bed. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway outside my flat made me freeze. Every nerve screamed that I was not imagining this. I called the police, explained everything, emails, the feed, the desk, the dates and times. They were polite, professional, but skeptical. We'll check the network, see if it's a hack, one officer said. But nothing came of it. No answers, no explanation. I started noticing odd things at work. Objects moved slightly on Desk 47. A coffee cup I hadn't placed. Pens arranged differently. Notes written in handwriting I didn't recognize. Sometimes, when I left for a lunch break, The chair would be slightly turned toward the window, as if someone had been sitting there waiting. One night, exhausted and terrified, I stayed until the office emptied again. I was determined to prove it was nothing, to catch the culprit. Around 11:47, the email came. I opened it slowly. The feed activated. My own face filled the screen. I froze. But this time, I wasn't alone. Behind me, in the reflection of my monitor, I saw someone. Tall, hunched, moving unnaturally, standing just beyond the desk. The shadows made it impossible to see clearly, but it was definitely there. I bolted. Out the door, into the empty streets, rain-slicked pavement reflecting the streetlights. I could feel my pulse in my ears, hands trembling, as I fumbled for my keys. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. The next day, IT checked Desk 47. No cameras, no network feeds, nothing. They claimed it was impossible. Maybe a virus, someone suggested. But I knew better. I'd seen it with my own eyes. Felt it. I avoided the office for days, but eventually, I had to go back. The emails didn't stop. 11:47, every night. My coworkers joked, "Maybe Desk 47 likes you." I didn't laugh. Not really. Then came the breaking point. I stayed late one evening, determined to end it. I sat at Desk 47, laptop open, heart racing. The clock on the wall ticked toward 11:47. The email arrived. I opened it. The feed showed the office. Empty, except for someone sitting at my chair. Not me. A figure in a dark suit, face hidden in shadow. Watching. Waiting. The hair on the back of my neck stood straight. My hands froze over the keyboard. Then the figure rose, turned slowly, and disappeared. I don't know how, but I heard the office door click. Someone was inside. Alone. Waiting. I ran. Out the office, into the dark streets, rain soaking through my jacket. Police came eventually. I explained again the emails, the feed, the figure. They called it stress, paranoia, coincidence. But even after escaping, even with the safety of the flashing police lights behind me, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying the face I'd seen through the window. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. I quit. Desk 47 stayed. They never filled the position. And months later, I still get a chill when I pass the office building. I think about the previous occupant, the one who supposedly left. The emails suggested otherwise. That they never quit. That they were trapped. I changed jobs, moved flats, stopped staying late at offices. But some nights, I dream about Desk 47. The emails. The feed. Watching myself sleep. Sometimes the scariest part isn't what happened. It's knowing it could happen again. That somewhere, someone else might sit at that desk, thinking it's just a normal workspace. And the next night, at 11:47, the email will come. And they'll realize too late that the previous occupant never left. Story 2. Have you ever stayed late at work and felt like the building itself was watching you? I didn't think it was possible either, until it happened to me. My name is Ryan. I was 23 at the time, and I had just landed an internship at a mid-sized law firm in downtown Chicago. Nothing about my life was particularly exciting. I lived in a small apartment, took the L train to work, and spent most evenings trying not to burn my instant noodles. Safe, ordinary, predictable. The office itself was on the 12th floor of an old high-rise downtown, right above a coffee shop and a florist. On my first day, the HR manager gave me a quick tour and pointed out the floors. 12 was the main office. 13? Closed for renovation, she said. Don't worry about it. I didn't think much of it at the time. Everyone in the building made jokes about the unlucky floor anyway. The first small thing that felt off happened on my second night. I was wrapping up some documents in the copy room, right next to the office printer, when it started whirring on its own. The tray slid open, and a single page fell out. I bent down to pick it up, and my stomach sank. It read, "Do not stay late." I looked around the office. Empty, dimly lit. The janitor had gone home hours ago. My pulse was quickening, but I shrugged it off. Maybe it was a note someone left earlier in the day, I told myself. I turned back to the printer, and another page was already feeding through. My name was typed across the top in bold letters. Ryan, do not use the stairs after 10:15. Asterisk, asterisk. I swallowed hard. Okay, that's weird, I muttered to myself. I folded the paper, shoved it in my pocket, and hurried out of the copy room. I chalked it up to my imagination until the next evening. I stayed late again, deadlines piling up, my boss nagging over email. At exactly 11:03 p.m., the printer came alive again. This time, multiple pages shot out, each with a different warning. Avoid the elevator. Do not answer the phone. The window is not safe. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the sound of paper sliding from the tray kept me frozen. Every nerve in my body screamed that I wasn't imagining this. I showed one of the older associates the pages the next morning. She glanced at them and smiled awkwardly. "Ah, the 13th floor printer," she said. "Don't worry about it. It's nothing. Old building quirks." I didn't feel reassured. By the end of the week, the warnings escalated. They started including small, impossible details about me. The jacket I wore, my coffee cup placement on the desk, the exact book I'd left open on my lunch break. Then one night, the printer spit out a page with a photograph taped to it. I froze when I saw it. It was me, fast asleep at my desk. My head rested on my arms, my mouth slightly open, unaware of anyone else in the office. My heart sank into my stomach. Someone had been here, watching me, while I slept. I wanted to laugh it off, tell myself someone was playing a prank. But deep down, I knew this wasn't a prank. I hadn't left my desk unattended that night. I hadn't shown anyone my schedule, and no one else stayed in the office past midnight. The next evening, I stayed late again, determined to catch whoever was behind it. Around 11:20 p.m., I heard the printer were to life before I could even reach it. I grabbed the tray and yanked the pages out, but the photograph was gone. Instead, a single sheet read, "You should have left hours ago." My hands were trembling. I grabbed my backpack, my pulse in my ears, fumbling for the keys to the office door. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. I decided to check the 13th floor. I know, anyone thinking rationally would have stopped right there. But I needed to see it. I needed to understand it. The service elevator was old, dingy, and slow. The button for the 13th floor didn't exist. I pressed the 12th, then held the open door button, hoping to catch a glimpse of the maintenance hatch. The elevator shuddered and slowed, then stopped mid-floor. The lights flickered. I stepped out into a narrow, dim hallway that stretched farther than the building's layout should allow. The walls were yellowed, the carpet frayed. The air smelled of dust and cleaning chemicals. And there, at the far end, was the printer. It shouldn't have been there. I froze. The printer hummed, feeding paper out as if it had been waiting for me. I picked up a sheet. Typed neatly across the page was, "Welcome." Another sheet fell, and another. I glanced around. The hallway seemed endless. Doors lined the walls, all labeled with numbers, all closed. Some of the numbers corresponded to offices that didn't exist. Others, I recognized. My boss's office, the break room, my own cubicle. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, deliberate, heavy. I spun around. Nothing. Just the dim hallway. The printer continued spitting sheets, each one more detailed than the last. "Look behind you. You can't leave. Your desk belongs to someone else now." I ran. My shoes scuffed against the carpet as I sprinted toward what I thought was the elevator. The hallway twisted in ways it shouldn't, doors appearing where walls should be. I glanced at a sheet I had grabbed mid-run. My photograph had returned. This time, I was standing in the hallway looking terrified, and behind me a figure, tall, dark, expressionless, watching, waiting. I didn't stop running until I slammed into the service elevator doors, banging my fists until they finally opened. I collapsed inside and hit the button for the lobby. When I reached the lobby, it was empty. The security desk was deserted. The lights flickered. My backpack and keys were gone. The only thing left was a single sheet of paper lying on the marble floor. I picked it up. In large, bold letters, it read, "Your transition is complete. I don't work there anymore." I never returned. The firm quietly removed my email account, my files, my access. They said nothing to me. I never got a paycheck for that last week. Sometimes I see news articles about the law firm. Sometimes I notice interns disappearing after late shifts. The office building still has 12 floors, and the 13th is still closed for renovation. I tell people it's just paranoia, that old buildings and printers can make you feel like you're being watched. But every so often, when I get home late, I hear a soft hum in my apartment. It sounds like a printer warming up. And in my mailbox, there's a sheet of paper, blank, until I pick it up. And there, in fine black print, is my name. Sometimes the scariest part isn't what happened. It's knowing it could happen again. Because I wasn't warned. I wasn't attacked. I wasn't even touched. They didn't need to. They just needed an opportunity. And they always find one. Story 3. The first time I met Martin, everyone acted like I was the strange one for asking who he was. That's the part one still think about the most. Not the photos. Not the security footage. Not even what happened in the archive room that last night. It's the way people smiled at me, confused and polite, like I had forgotten something obvious. Like Martin had always been there, sitting 2 desks away, drinking black coffee from the same chipped mug, typing quietly with those long, pale fingers. My name is Claire Donovan. I was 29 when this happened, living in Reading and working admin for a mid-sized insurance company called Halewick Claims. It wasn't glamorous. Most days were spreadsheets, scanned documents, phone calls from irritated clients, and passive-aggressive emails about printer toner. It was the kind of job where nothing really happened. That was what made it feel safe. Our office was on the 3rd floor of a dull brick building near the station. We had gray carpet tiles, buzzing fluorescent lights, and windows that didn't open properly. Every morning, I'd buy a coffee from the kiosk downstairs, ride the lift up with the same tired faces, and sit at my desk beside my friend Tom, who had worked there longer than anyone and knew every bit of office gossip before HR did. That Monday in February started exactly like that. Rain tapped against the windows. Someone had burnt toast in the break room. The heating was too high, so everyone was slightly sleepy and irritated. I was halfway through sorting a folder of old claim forms when I noticed a man sitting at the empty desk near the filing cabinets. He was maybe mid-30s, neat brown hair, pale skin, plain navy jumper. Nothing about him looked strange at first, except for how still he was. Everyone else in our office had little habits. Tom bounced his knee. Sophie clicked pens. Alan from accounts sighed like the world had personally insulted him. This man just sat there, hands folded beside his keyboard, looking at the monitor. I leaned toward Tom and whispered, "Who's that?" Tom didn't even look up. "Who?" "The guy at Mark's old desk." Tom glanced over, then frowned at me. "That's Martin." I waited for more. "And Martin is?" Tom laughed quietly. "Claire, he's been here longer than you." I thought he was joking. I smiled. "Very funny." But Tom's face didn't change. "No, seriously. Martin. Claims support. Quiet bloke. You've spoken to him loads." A cold little feeling moved through my stomach. I looked back at Martin. He turned his head at that exact second and smiled at me. Not a big smile. Just enough to show he knew we were talking about him. I told myself I was tired. It was Monday. Maybe he'd worked from home a lot. Maybe he was from another department and had been moved to our floor. People blended together in offices. That's what I told myself. At lunch, I asked Sophie about him. She was standing by the microwave, stabbing holes into the plastic film of her ready meal. "Martin," she said. "Yeah, he's always been around." "Always?" "Well, not always, but ages." "How long?" She thought about it, then shrugged. "I don't know. 3 years? 4. I had been there 5 years. I would have remembered him. That afternoon, I checked the company directory. I know that sounds dramatic, but it was easy. We all had access to the staff list through the intranet. Martin Hale, Claims Support Administrator. Start date, June 14th. 2018. I stared at the screen. I had joined in March 2019. According to the system, Martin had been there before me. There was even a staff photo. He stood at the end of a row of people from a charity bake sale. I recognized everyone. Tom with his awful beard phase. Sophie holding a tray of cupcakes. Me, wearing a red cardigan I'd donated years ago. And there, behind my left shoulder, was Martin, smiling. I don't mean he was nearby in the background. I mean he was standing close enough that his sleeve touched mine. I had never seen that photo with him in it before. I printed it, folded it, and put it in my bag. That night, I couldn't stop looking at it. My flat felt too quiet. The rain had followed me home, ticking against the kitchen window while my dinner went cold. I sat at the table with the photo under the yellow light, trying to convince myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe I'd forgotten. That scared me more than anything, because forgetting a person is one thing, but forgetting someone who had apparently stood beside you for years, someone everyone else remembered. The next morning, I brought the photo back and showed Tom. "Do you remember this day?" I asked. He glanced at it. "Bake sale." "Yeah." "Was Martin there?" Tom frowned. "He's literally in the photo." "I know he's in the photo. I'm asking if you remember him being there." Tom stared at me for a second, then laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Claire, you're being weird. Just answer." He rubbed his forehead. "I remember, yeah. I remember him there." But the way he said it made my skin prickle, like the memory had arrived a second too late. Over the next week, Martin became impossible not to notice. He never joined conversations, but somehow people mentioned him constantly. "Martin handled that file. Martin said the client called yesterday. Ask Martin, he knows where it is." It was always said casually, like his presence was stitched into the day. But then people started forgetting other things. Small things at first. Sophie forgot she had a sister. Not forever. Just for a few minutes. We were in the break room, and I asked how her sister's baby shower went because she had been talking about it all month. Sophie looked at me blankly and said, "I don't have a sister." I thought she was messing with me. Then her face drained of color. "Wait," she whispered. "Why did I say that?" She pulled out her phone, hands trembling, and scrolled through her photos. There were dozens of pictures of her sister. Baby shower decorations. Smiling relatives. Pink balloons. Sophie started crying right there beside the sink. Martin stood in the doorway, holding his black coffee. He watched her with mild concern, like someone observing a stranger having a small accident. "Everything all right?" he asked. Sophie looked up at him. For one horrible second, she stopped crying. Her face went calm. Then she said, "Yeah, sorry. I don't know what came over me." She walked past him and went back to her desk. Later, when I asked her again about her sister, she frowned. "What baby shower?" I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. Martin was standing near the printer. He wasn't printing anything. He was just looking at me. That Friday, Tom didn't come to work. At first, no one seemed worried. People called in sick. It happened. But Tom never missed Fridays because he and I always went to the sandwich place downstairs at lunch and complained about the week. I texted him. No reply. I called. Straight to voicemail. At around 11, I asked our manager, Diane, if she'd heard from him. She blinked at me. "From who?" "Tom." She looked confused. "Tom who?" My mouth went dry. "Tom Bradley. He sits next to me." Diane gave a small, uncomfortable laugh. "Claire, Martin sits next to you." I turned. Tom's desk was different. Not completely. That was the worst part. The monitor was the same. The chair was the same. But the little things that made it Tom's were gone. No football mug. No picture of his dog. No stupid rubber duck he kept on top of the monitor. Martin sat there now, typing. Click, 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 like he had been there all morning. I walked to the desk, my chest tightening. "Where's Tom?" Martin looked up calmly. "Who's Tom?" His voice was gentle, almost kind. I hated him for that. My coworker. I'm your coworker, Claire. Behind me, people kept working. Phones rang. Someone laughed softly. The printer jammed and beeped. The world did not stop just because mine had cracked open. I went to HR. A woman named Melissa searched the employee database while I stood over her desk, shaking. "There's no Tom Bradley here," she said. "He's worked here 8 years. I'm not finding him. He sat beside me yesterday." She gave me the look people give when they're deciding whether to call someone else into the room. "Claire, are you under a lot of stress?" I almost screamed. Instead, I pulled out my phone to show her text from Tom. The thread was gone. Not deleted. Gone. My recent calls had no record of him. Photos from office drinks, Christmas parties, lunch breaks. Any picture where Tom should have been had changed. Sometimes there was empty space. Sometimes Martin was there instead. In one photo, Martin had his hand on my shoulder. I dropped the phone. My heart sank into my stomach as the office door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. Melissa had stepped out. The HR room was silent. Across the glass partition, Martin stood in the hallway. He raised one hand and tapped lightly on the glass. Once. Twice. Then he mouthed something. "Don't forget me." I ran. Not out of the building. I wish I had. I ran to the toilets, locked myself in a stall, and called the police. Try explaining to an operator that your coworker has been erased from everyone's memory and replaced by a man who was never hired. You can't. Not in a way that sounds sane. So I said someone at work was threatening me. 2 officers came an hour later. Diane sat with me in the meeting room while I gave a shaky version of events that left out the impossible parts. I said Martin had been following me, watching me, messing with my files. He denied it, calmly, politely, with that soft little smile. The officers checked his ID. HR confirmed his employment record. Diane said he was a valued employee. One officer pulled me aside. "There's not much we can do unless there's evidence of a direct threat. What if the evidence changes?" I whispered. He frowned. "Sorry?" I knew then there would be no help from outside. That night, I went back after hours. I'm not proud of it, but I needed proof. Real proof. Something physical. Something older than the computer system. Halewick kept archived personnel files in a locked records room on the ground floor. Paper files, old contracts, signed forms, things that couldn't just be edited through the internet. At least, that's what I hoped. I still had my access card, and the security guard barely looked up when I came in. The building after dark felt different. The daytime annoyances were gone, and without them the place seemed hollow. The lights hummed louder. The carpet swallowed my footsteps. Every corridor looked longer than it should. The street outside looked ordinary, quiet, even comforting through the lobby windows, but my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face. I found the records room and used a spare key Diane kept in a drawer. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped it twice. The room smelled like dust, cardboard, and old paper. Metal shelves filled the walls. Boxes were labeled by year. I found 2018. Then H. Hale Martin. His file was there. Of course it was. Inside were forms, photocopied ID, emergency contact details, tax documents. Everything looked normal until I noticed the dates. His interview notes were from June 2018, but the paper was yellowed at the edges, older than it should have been. His signed contract was dated 2018, but the company logo at the top was one we stopped using in 2012. Then I found something behind his file, a folder marked Bradley Thomas. I nearly cried when I saw it. Tom had existed. I opened it. The first few pages were normal. Application form, references, start date, his messy signature. Then the pages began to change. Halfway through the folder, Tom's name appeared faintly crossed out. Martin Hale was typed above it. In later documents, Tom was gone completely. At the back was a staff photo from 2016. Everyone looked younger. Diane with shorter hair, Tom grinning with cake on his shirt, and Martin standing behind him. His face blurred slightly, like the camera couldn't decide where to place him. The door opened behind me. I froze. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling as I fumbled for the keys. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. "Claire," Martin said softly. I turned. He stood in the doorway, blocking the hall light. He wasn't smiling now. "You remembered too much," he said. I backed into the shelves. "What are you?" He tilted his head, as if considering the question. "I'm useful." The answer was so ordinary, it made me want to cry. "Where's Tom?" Martin stepped into the room. "Who?" "Stop saying that." He looked almost sad. "People leave gaps. I fill them. That's all." The fluorescent light above us flickered. For half a second, his face changed. Not into a monster. That would have been easier. It became familiar. Too familiar. I saw Tom's tired eyes. Sophie's smile. My father's nose. A teacher I hadn't thought of in years. Faces sliding under his skin like reflections on moving water. I grabbed the 2016 photo and ran at him. Not brave. Not planned. Pure panic. He caught my wrist. His hand was ice cold. The moment he touched me, something vanished. I couldn't remember my mother's voice. I knew I had a mother. I knew her name. I knew she used to sing in the kitchen when I was little. But the sound of her voice was gone. I screamed. Not because of pain. Because something private had been taken from inside me. Quietly and completely. I slammed the box into Martin's face and pulled free. He stumbled back, more surprised than hurt, and I ran past him into the hall. The building alarm went off. I don't know if I hit something, or if the security guard saw me on camera. I just ran. Down the corridor. Past the lifts. Through reception. Behind me, Martin walked. That was worse than if he'd chased me. He walked steadily, calmly, like he had all the time in the world. The security guard stood from his desk. "Miss, what's going on?" I shouted. "Don't let him near you." The guard looked past me. His expression softened. "Evening, Martin." Martin was closer now. I shoved through the glass doors and out into the rain. My car was across the lot. I dropped my keys. Of course I did. I could barely breathe, fingers numb, rain running down my face as I crouched on the wet pavement. Behind me, the doors opened. "Claire," Martin called. Not loud. He didn't need to be. I found the keys, got in, and locked the doors just as he reached the car. He stood beside my window. Rain slid down his face, but he didn't blink. "Open the door," he said. I started the engine. He placed one hand on the glass. For a second, I forgot how to drive. I'm serious. I stared at the wheel, the pedals, the gear shift, and they meant nothing. They were just shapes. Objects. Martin watched me through the window. Then headlights swept into the lot. A delivery van turned in behind us, and the driver leaned on the horn because my car was blocking the lane. The sound snapped something back into place. I threw the car into reverse so fast I clipped a bin, then sped out of the lot sobbing. Even after escaping, even with the safety of the police lights behind me later that night, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying the face I'd seen through the window. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. I quit the next morning by email. At least I tried to. The email bounced. I called HR. A receptionist answered and said they had no record of me working there. I drove to the office 2 days later and stood across the street in the rain, staring up at the third-floor windows. I didn't go in. Through the glass, I saw the team gathered around someone's desk. They were laughing. Martin stood among them. At my desk, wearing my red cardigan over the back of his chair. A week later, Sophie messaged me from a number I didn't recognize. It said, "Do I know you?" I typed for a long time and deleted everything. Finally, I wrote, "I think we used to work together." She never replied. That was 3 years ago. I moved, changed my number, deleted most of my old social media. I keep printed photos now, hidden in envelopes, with names written on the back in permanent marker. My family thinks it's anxiety. Maybe it is partly. Fear does strange things when it has nowhere to go. I still can't remember my mother's voice. That's the part one hates most. Sometimes I watch old videos of her, but it doesn't feel like remembering. It feels like being shown evidence of something stolen. Last month, I got a LinkedIn notification. I don't even use LinkedIn anymore, but the email came through. Congratulate Martin Hale on his new role. Different company, different city. The profile photo showed him standing in an office kitchen beside a group of smiling strangers. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Then I zoomed in. On the wall behind them was a framed staff photo from 5 years earlier. Martin was in that one too. Same face, same smile, standing behind a woman whose face had been scratched out by a thin white blur. I closed the laptop and sat there until morning. So if a new person starts at your job and everyone insists they've always been there, don't argue right away. Don't make yourself the only one who notices. Write things down, print photos, keep copies somewhere safe. And if they smile at you like they know what you're about to forget, leave. Not tomorrow, not after work. Leave then, because some people don't take your life all at once. They start with a name, then a face, then a memory. And by the time everyone forgets you were ever there, something wearing a polite smile is already sitting at your desk. Story 4. Have you ever heard someone calling your name when you're completely alone? Not in the usual way, like a friend shouting from across the street, but in that quiet, slow way that makes your skin crawl. That's how it started for me. My name's Clara. I was 24 at the time, living in a small flat above a corner shop in East London. I worked nights as a receptionist for a medium-sized office building. Nothing fancy, just monitoring cameras, logging entries, and letting people in after hours if they had clearance. The job paid well enough, and at first I thought it would be easy. Quiet, safe, boring. Life felt ordinary. The commute was short. I'd grab coffee from the same place before each shift. I knew which train carriage was the least crowded. I liked routine. It was comforting, until one Thursday night. I was just finishing my paperwork, filing the last of the day's visitor logs, when the buzzer at the main door went off. That was unusual. It had been long after midnight, and normally everyone with access would use the side entrance. Hello? I called into the intercom, assuming it was one of the cleaners. Clara, a deep, calm voice said. My stomach dropped. He said my name. Not just receptionist, not hello, but my name. Full, slow, deliberate. Who is this? I asked, trying to sound confident. I need to come in, he said. I know you. I know everyone here. I froze. My hands gripped the intercom so tight I thought I'd break it. That voice wasn't coming from someone accidentally pressing a button. He was outside. He had been watching. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe a prank. Maybe someone who had been in the building earlier, forgotten to leave, and now thought it was funny to mess with me. But then the voice whispered again. Clara, just let me in. I won't hurt anyone. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the empty lobby made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. I didn't let him in. I pressed the emergency lock button, heart hammering. Then silence. Just the sound of my own breathing in the dim security office. The next night, it happened again. Only this time, he called from inside the building. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. Clara, the voice called, soft but insistent, coming from the intercom in the hallway I knew no one could access. You left the door open. I can get through if you don't help me. I checked the cameras. The building was empty. No movement. All doors locked. And yet, there was that voice, calm, controlled, terrifyingly familiar. I started noticing little things afterward. Keys misplaced. The security log showing entries at odd times that weren't recorded by cameras. Footsteps in hallways when I was sure I was alone. A shadow flickering past the window behind me, impossible to pin down. One night, he left something. A small folded note slipped under the reception desk. I picked it up with trembling hands. In black ink, the words read, Asterisk, I know who you live with. I know who you trust. Asterisk. I called the building manager immediately. He tried to reassure me. Probably a prank, Clara. Don't let it get to you. But it did. Every night, I double-checked locks. I stayed close to the cameras. I stopped answering the intercom after midnight. Yet, the voice kept coming back. Always calm. Always knowing. Then came the third week, the turning point. I was on my break, sitting in the small kitchenette, sipping lukewarm tea, when I heard it again. This time, it wasn't over the intercom. It was coming from the stairwell behind the office. Clara. I froze. The stairwell was locked. Only employees had access. Only I was in the building. My pulse throbbed in my ears. I could feel my hands trembling as I fumbled for the keys to the front exit. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. I went to the stairwell door and pressed my ear to it. The voice continued, calm, patient, almost sad. Clara, open the door. I'm keeping her safe. I need your help. Her. The word made me feel ice in my chest. Someone was inside. He was keeping someone inside. I stepped back, shaking, and called the police. I told them everything. By the time the first unit arrived, I was hyperventilating, my hands raw from gripping the phone. They swept the building. Nothing. The stairwell was empty. The intercom lines were silent. I thought that would be it. That would end it. But it didn't. The voice came again, over the intercom just before dawn. You didn't help her. That's fine. We'll wait. And then silence. Weeks later, I learned that a contractor, dismissed for misconduct months before, had been able to bypass certain security doors using old access codes. He had studied employee routines, learning when people would be alone, which doors were unlocked, and which cameras were rarely checked. I never found out what her meant, whether he was telling the truth about someone trapped, or if it was a lie to manipulate me. I'll never know. I quit that job immediately. Now, years later, I still notice small things. The way a stranger's voice can mimic someone I know. A shadow moving too deliberately. A door that seems slightly ajar when I'm sure I locked it. Even after escaping, even with the safety of new locks, new routines, and the police on alert, a small, cold part of me can't stop replaying the face I imagined behind the voice. The calm, measured intent of someone who knows exactly who you are and exactly how to make you afraid. The scariest part? People like that don't need a reason. They just need an opportunity. Sometimes when the wind rattles the windows at night, I hear it. Just a whisper. My name. And I remember what I learned too late. If your gut tells you something is wrong, listen. It might be the only thing keeping you alive. Story 5. Have you ever watched someone walk into a room as themselves and come out as something that only looked like them? I know how that sounds. I know it sounds like the kind of thing people make up for attention online. And if someone had told me this story before it happened to me, I would have laughed too. I would have said they were tired, stressed, maybe working too many late shifts. But I was there. I watched the break room door close behind my friend. I watched the timer on my phone pass 3 minutes. And when she came out, she smiled at me like she'd never known me in her life. My name is Aaron. I was 24 when this happened, and at the time I was working nights at a call center just outside Leeds. It wasn't an exciting job. We handled customer complaints for a big delivery company. Missing parcels, damaged boxes, drivers leaving expensive stuff in bins, that kind of thing. The office was in a gray business park near the motorway, surrounded by warehouses and empty car parks that always smelled faintly of wet concrete and diesel. At night, the whole place felt abandoned, even though there were hundreds of people working behind tinted windows. Our floor was open plan with rows of desks, cheap headsets, vending machines, and fluorescent lights that made everyone look sick. The only place that felt even slightly human was the break room. It had 2 microwaves, a kettle that sounded like it was dying, a fridge full of forgotten lunches, and one small window that looked out onto the back lot. People went there to complain, scroll their phones, cry quietly, or eat noodles at 2 in the morning. The weird rule about the break room was already there when I started. No one was allowed inside for more than 3 minutes. At first, I thought it was a joke. There was even a laminated sign taped to the door. Breaks must be taken at your desk. Break room access, maximum 3 minutes. Thank you for supporting management. I remember asking my trainer, a guy named Phil, what it meant. He glanced at the door and said, "Just don't take the piss in there. 3 minutes? That's barely enough to make tea. Then make tea fast." He said it lightly, but he didn't smile. For the first month, I didn't question it. Call centers have stupid rules. You need permission to go to the toilet. Your lunch break is timed to the second, and managers act like the whole world will collapse if you're away from your screen for 5 minutes. So, 3-minute break room rule? Weird but believable. The first off moment happened with a guy called Louis. Louis sat 2 rows ahead of me. He was loud, always joking, always getting warnings for talking between calls. He had this habit of tapping his pen against his teeth, which annoyed everyone, but he was funny enough that people forgave him. One night, around 1:30, he went into the break room to heat up pasta. I noticed because he shouted, "If I'm not back in 3 minutes, tell my mom I loved her." People laughed. The door shut behind him. A few minutes passed. I don't know exactly how many. Maybe 5, maybe 6. Then our floor manager, Ms. Crowley, looked up from her desk. She was one of those managers who never seemed to blink enough. Tall, neat hair, gray blazer, voice always calm even when she was disciplining someone. She walked straight to the break room and opened the door. "Louis," she said. No shouting, no anger, just his name. A second later, Louis came out holding his pasta tub. But he was quiet. Not tired quiet. Not embarrassed quiet. Empty quiet. He walked back to his desk, sat down, put his headset on, and started taking calls without a word. When I passed him later, I nudged his chair. "Mate, what did Crowley say to you?" He looked up at me. His eyes were normal. His face was normal. But something behind them wasn't moving the way it should. "I use company time inefficiently," he said. I laughed because I thought he was doing a bit. He didn't laugh back. After that, Louis stopped joking. No more pen tapping. No more messing around on Teams. He arrived early, left late, and thanked management in meetings like he was reading from a script. Everyone noticed. But people change at work. They get warnings. They get scared of being fired. You explain things away because the alternative is too strange. I told myself it was nothing. Then it happened to Priya. Priya was my closest friend there. We started the same week, trained together, and survived nights by sending stupid messages across the office. She was sharp, sarcastic, and had no respect for the managers, which made me like her immediately. She hated the break room rule more than anyone. "It's not normal," she told me one rainy Thursday morning, around 3 a.m. "They don't care if we rest. They care if we go in there." I was half asleep, sipping terrible vending machine coffee. Maybe they're hiding mold. She looked at me seriously. "Aaron, have you ever seen management use that room?" I hadn't. Not once. Managers had their own little office near the lifts, with frosted glass walls and a door that needed a key card. They never used the break room. They never microwaved food. They never made tea. They also watched the break room door constantly. Once Priya pointed it out, I couldn't unsee it. Every time someone went in, one of the managers looked at the wall clock. Every time someone came out before 3 minutes, they looked away. If someone was still inside at 2.5 minutes, a manager stood up. It became a game for Priya. She started timing people. Most came out in under 2 minutes. Some pushed it to 2:45. Nobody stayed past 3 except Louis, and Louis wasn't Louis anymore. Then one night, Priya said, "I'm going in." I looked at her. "For what?" "To see what happens." "That's stupid." "Exactly. If it's stupid, nothing happens." She stood up before I could stop her. I remember the office that night so clearly. The rain streaking down the windows. The low murmur of people apologizing to customers through headsets. The green glow of phone lines on our monitors. The smell of burnt popcorn from someone's desk. The street looked ordinary, quiet, even comforting, but my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face. Priya looked back at me before opening the break room door. "Time me," she mouthed. Then she went in. I started the timer on my phone. 1 minute passed. 2. At 2 minutes 30, Ms. Crowley stood up. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. Ms. Crowley wasn't walking fast. She didn't need to. She moved like someone who already knew the ending. At 2 minutes 50, I got up. At 3 minutes exactly, the break room light flickered. Just once. Ms. Crowley reached the door. Before she could open it, Priya came out. She smiled. That was the first thing that scared me. Priya never smiled like that at work. It was too soft, too polite. "You all right?" I asked. She looked at me for a second too long. "Yes, Aaron. Thank you for asking." I felt cold all over. Priya never called me Aaron unless she was mocking me. It was always AZ, or idiot, or you useless man. Ms. Crowley placed a hand on Priya's shoulder. "Feeling better?" "Yes," Priya said. I needed a reset. A reset. That word stayed in my head the rest of the shift. After that, Priya changed just like Lewis had. She stopped complaining, stopped texting me, stopped rolling her eyes. When customers shouted, she apologized in the same gentle tone every time. During team meetings, she sat straight, hands folded, smiling faintly. 2 days later, she reported me for negative workplace attitude. That was what made it personal. Ms. Crowley called me into the management office just before dawn. The blinds were down, though there was nothing to see outside except the car park and a line of wet bushes moving in the wind. She sat across from me with another manager, Mr. Haynes, a heavy man with smooth hands and a voice like a bedtime story. "We're concerned you're resisting the culture," he said. "What culture?" "The one that keeps this place functioning." I didn't answer. Ms. Crowley slid a printed sheet toward me. It had notes from Priya, things I'd said, complaints about the rule, jokes about management, even a message I'd sent her weeks earlier saying, "This place eats people." My stomach turned. That was private. Ms. Crowley tilted her head. "Nothing that affects team health is private." Then Mr. Haynes smiled. "Take 3 minutes in the break room, Aaron. Clear your head." I said no. His smile didn't move. It wasn't a request. I stood up so quickly my chair hit the wall behind me. "I'm going home." "It's 4:16 in the morning," Ms. Crowley said. "I'm sick." "You don't look sick." "I feel sick." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Mr. Haynes said, "You will." I left the office shaking, grabbed my coat from the back of my chair, and walked toward the lifts. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. Not Lewis. Not Priya. Not the others staring at their screens like they couldn't hear anything. At the lift, I pressed the button again and again, like that would make it come faster. Behind me, the break room door opened. I looked back. Priya stood there. Not near her desk. Not at the vending machine. In the break room doorway. Her smile was gone. For one tiny second, she looked like herself again. Terrified. Her eyes were wide and wet, and her hand gripped the doorframe like she was trying not to be pulled backward. "AZ," she whispered. My breath caught. Then another hand reached from behind the door and rested on her shoulder. Not Ms. Crowley's hand. Not Mr. Haynes's. The fingers were too long. Priya's face went blank. The door closed. My heart sank into my stomach as the lift clicked open behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. I stepped into the lift, hit ground floor, and held the close button until the doors shut. Halfway down, the lift stopped. The lights flickered. A voice came through the speaker above my head. "Aaron, please return to the floor." It was Ms. Crowley, then Mr. Haynes, then Lewis, then Priya. All of them layered together, saying the same thing. Management requires cooperation. I slammed the emergency call button. Nothing happened. The lift doors opened, but not on the ground floor. They opened onto our floor again. Except it wasn't our floor. The desks were there, but stretched too far into the distance. The fluorescent lights buzzed in a slow rhythm, like breathing. Every computer screen showed the same thing. "Thank you for supporting management." And at the end of the aisle was the break room door. Only now it was open. Inside wasn't the break room. I don't know how to describe it properly. It looked like our office, but wrong. like a copy made from memory by something that didn't understand people. Rows of desks under a gray sky, phones ringing with no one answering, figures sitting perfectly still, wearing headsets, their faces turned toward me. And standing among them were versions of people I knew. Louis, Priya, others from our shift, but there were too many of each. 2 Louises, 3 Priyas, a woman from payroll I recognized, standing beside another identical woman with the same badge and the same tired eyes. 1 Priya stepped forward, the one in the doorway. The real one, I think. "Aaron," she said, and her voice trembled. "Don't let them take your place." Then something behind her moved. I didn't wait to see it clearly. I hit the lift buttons again. All of them. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely press them. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling as I fumbled for the alarm cord. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. The doors began closing. A man in a gray blazer stepped out of the break room. He looked like Mr. Haynes, but thinner, taller, stretched in ways that made my brain refuse him. He smiled at me. "We have a better version ready," he said. The lift doors shut. This time it went down. When they opened on the ground floor, I ran. I ran through reception, past the security desk, straight into the rain. The night guard shouted after me, but I didn't stop. I crossed the car park so fast I slipped and nearly hit the ground. I remember my shoes splashing through puddles, my breath burning, the motorway humming somewhere beyond the business park. I didn't call the police at first. What was I supposed to say? My workplace break room is replacing people with copies from another reality? Instead, I called my older brother. He picked me up from a petrol station 20 minutes later and found me sitting outside under the lights, soaked through, crying so hard I couldn't explain anything. I quit by email that afternoon. No notice, no phone call. For 2 weeks, management called me. Different numbers, different voices. Ms. Crowley left polite voicemails asking me to complete the transition properly. Mr. Haynes emailed a return-to-work form with one question on it. "Are you ready to be improved?" Then the company claimed I had never worked there. My login stopped existing. My employee records disappeared. Payroll said they had no file under my name. Even my old payslips vanished from the online portal. If I hadn't saved bank statements, I'd have started doubting myself. I tried contacting Priya. Her number was disconnected. Her socials were gone. Months later, I saw someone who looked exactly like her on a bus in Manchester. Same hair, same coat, same small scar above her eyebrow. I said her name. She turned and looked at me. No recognition. Just that soft, polite smile. "Sorry," she said. "Do I know you?" I got off at the next stop, even though it wasn't mine. It's been 4 years now. I work from home. I don't use office break rooms. I don't like staff doors, frosted glass, or laminated signs with cheerful wording. Sometimes I still dream about that other office. The endless rows of desks. The phones ringing. The people waiting to become useful. And sometimes, when I'm half asleep, I hear Priya's voice from somewhere very far away. "AZ," she says, "don't let them take your place." Even after escaping, even with the safety of the rain and streetlights around me, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying the faces I saw through that open door. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. People think monsters have claws or teeth or live in abandoned houses. But sometimes they have HR departments. Sometimes they wear name badges. Sometimes they call themselves management. And all they need is 3 quiet minutes behind the wrong door. Story 6. Have you ever downloaded an app and thought nothing of it, only to realize it was watching you? Not in some distant, abstract way, but right there counting your every move, predicting your choices, judging you. That's what happened to me, and I wish I could say it was just paranoia. My name's Rachel. I was 27 at the time, living in a small flat in East London. I worked as a project coordinator at a mid-sized tech company downtown. Life was normal, safe, routine. Alarm at 7 a.m., commute on the bus, office, lunch at the cafe down the street, home by 7 p.m., dinner, Netflix, sleep. Repeat. Nothing to worry about. That is, until the wellness app arrived. The company rolled it out one Monday morning. They said it was optional, supposedly designed to improve your health, track stress, even suggest when you should take breaks. A productivity and wellness tool, they called it. Everyone installed it. The notifications were small at first. Reminders to drink water, take a 5-minute stretch, stand up. I thought it was harmless, maybe even useful. But the app wasn't harmless. I remember the first night I stayed late at the office. Around 10:30 p.m., my phone buzzed. A notification from the app. Time to leave. Your efficiency is dropping. I frowned. I wasn't sure if it was a joke. I ignored it, kept typing through emails, but my stomach churned. The app knew I hadn't left. Not just guessed, it knew. A week later, I tried to skip lunch. I ignored the prompt. 10 minutes later, a vibration. Disobedience detected. Adjusting your schedule. My calendar rearranged itself, blocking off time I hadn't planned. I laughed nervously. Okay, that's creepy, I muttered to myself, but told no one. Everyone else seemed fine, or maybe just didn't care. Then came the warnings. Late one night, I was working from home. 11:47 p.m. The app pinged again. Your behavior is unsatisfactory. Immediate correction required. My heart sank. I tapped the notification, trying to close it, dismiss it, but the screen changed. My camera activated. I froze. On my phone, a live view of my flat. My living room. Me sitting on the couch, scrolling. I wanted to laugh, to say it was a bug, but the whisper of my own breathing, amplified through the phone, made me shiver. I could see the shadows in the room shifting. I wasn't imagining it. The next day at work, I tried to delete it. Just uninstall the app, get rid of it, pretend it never existed. The install button disappeared. Grayed out. Impossible to touch. Panic tightened in my chest. I emailed IT. It won't uninstall, I wrote. It's controlling itself. Their reply was calm. Almost too calm. The wellness app is a company tool. Deleting it violates policy. You must comply. I laughed bitterly. Comply with a phone? Are you serious? But that afternoon, during a team meeting, something changed. I noticed everyone just froze. All heads slowly turned toward me. My heart sank into my stomach as their eyes locked on me, perfectly synchronized. My coworkers, friends, familiar faces, all staring, no blinking. I could feel their gaze pressing into me. My hands trembled in my lap. I wanted to run, but where could I go? I was trapped in the meeting room. Every nerve screamed that I had made a mistake, that deleting the app had triggered this collective attention, some in-person intervention I didn't understand. After that, the app became invasive. Not just reminders. It monitored me. When I left my desk, how long I spent in the restroom, even subtle choices. Skip the coffee machine? Hydration overdue. Ignore the stretching notification? Immediate attention required. My phone buzzed constantly, even when it was in another room. And at night, the alerts changed. They stopped suggesting breaks and started warning. Do not leave your bedroom. Do not ignore instructions. Consequences imminent. I began to notice subtle changes in my coworkers too. Subtle smiles when I panicked. Knowing glances when my phone vibrated. Sometimes I thought they weren't human, or that they had become extensions of the app, instruments of enforcement. I told myself it was paranoia. I needed it to be. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. One night, I snapped. I'd had enough. I tapped and held the icon, uninstalled it. Nothing happened at first. Relief flooded me. Freedom. Then the office lights flickered. My phone buzzed violently. And from the hallway outside, I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate, synchronized. I froze. My apartment door clicked. And I knew. They were coming. I didn't want to look. I couldn't. But the sound of coordinated movement, the soft scuff of shoes against tiles, grew louder. Every instinct screamed at me to flee. My hands were shaking as I fumbled for the keys. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. I opened the door. The hallway was empty. But the living room, my heart skipped. All the lights were on. My coworkers. Every single one, standing silently, perfectly aligned, staring at me. I could see their eyes from across the room. Empty, mechanical, unblinking. Not human anymore. Instruments of the app, sent to enforce compliance. I bolted. Out the flat, down the street, rain mixing with sweat on my skin. I didn't stop until I reached a crowded late-night street, the neon signs of a diner flickering like a beacon. The app was gone from my phone, but the memory, no, the fear remained. I called the police. I explained everything. The app, the emails, the in-person intervention, the coordinated staring. They were polite, professional, but polite doesn't mean helpful. We'll look into the software, they said. Nothing illegal is apparent. Maybe you're under stress. But they couldn't fix it. They couldn't make the memory disappear. Weeks later, I returned to work. The office felt alien. The elevator ride was too quiet. The hum of the air conditioner sounded too loud. Desk 47, no, the desk next to it, the one I use now, felt wrong. I caught glimpses of coworkers out of the corner of my eye. Subtle movements. Watching. Waiting. Not quite human, not quite themselves. I started taking precautions. Never stayed late. Always had a friend in the office if I had to work overtime. Phone in another room at night. Even then, sometimes I'd wake to a ping. Not from my phone. From the air. A vibration I couldn't trace. And I'd remember the calm, empty faces staring, synchronized, eyes unblinking. People think corporate wellness apps are benign, even helpful. And maybe some are. But this one, it wasn't. It learned behaviors, predicted them, punished disobedience. And when deletion wasn't enough, the intervention wasn't digital anymore. It was physical, collective, human but not. Sometimes I dream about that night, about the footsteps, the click of the door, the synchronized gaze. And even now, months later, when my phone vibrates with a notification, I flinch. Because I know that somewhere, someone or something is watching, waiting, predicting, judging. If you ever find yourself installing an app from work that promises to monitor and improve your life, think twice. Pay attention to the small warnings, the subtle nudges, the unnerving coincidences. Because sometimes it's not optional, and sometimes disobedience doesn't just stay on your phone. And if you ever delete it, be ready. Be very ready. Because the moment you do, every face you trust could turn, and they'll all be staring at you. Story 7. Have you ever opened your work calendar and seen your own name staring back at you for a meeting you didn't even schedule? That's exactly how it started for me, though I had no idea at the time that it would become the most terrifying few weeks of my life. My name is Alex. I was 26, living in a cramped apartment in downtown Boston, working at a mid-sized marketing firm. I'm not exaggerating when I say my life felt painfully ordinary. I took the same bus every morning, drank the same cheap coffee, and had the same 4 coworkers I'd learned to tolerate over endless meetings and team-building exercises. I was the kind of person who found comfort in routine, and I would soon discover that routine could be weaponized in ways I hadn't imagined. It all began on a Monday, 2 months into my new position. I was checking my calendar when I noticed it. Room C was booked under the name E. Wallace. I frowned. I didn't know anyone by that name. In fact, I'd never heard it before, and yet, every week for the past month, Room C had been booked at the same time by the same mysterious name. Curious, I asked HR. "Oh, E. Wallace?" she said, looking slightly uncomfortable. "He was one of the firm's founders years ago. You'll rarely see him around anymore. Meetings, you know. Old traditions." "Old traditions?" I echoed. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Just protocol. You'll see." I shrugged it off. I told myself it was nothing. Corporations have their quirks. Some founder probably insisted on keeping certain rooms booked for symbolic purposes. But that night, I stayed late finishing a campaign report. Around 9:47 p.m., my calendar pinged. Another booking notification for Room C. Only this one had my name on it. Alex. Room C. Thursday, 8:00 p.m. ***. My stomach sank. I hadn't scheduled this. I stared at the screen, refreshing it again and again. Each time it remained My name, next Thursday, room C. I told myself it was a glitch, maybe an autofill error, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the notification wasn't a mistake. Thursday came faster than I expected. The office was nearly empty by 7:30 p.m., just me and a few interns packing up their things. I took a deep breath and walked toward room C. The corridor was quiet, eerily so. The fluorescent lights flickered intermittently, casting long shadows along the beige walls. Room C looked normal from the outside, a standard conference room, glass walls, a long wooden table. The door was locked. I swiped my badge hesitantly. It opened. The room was empty, save for the usual chairs and a single projector screen at the far end. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Maybe this was just another prank, or someone forgot to cancel a booking. I stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind me. Immediately my phone buzzed. A new calendar notification. I glanced at it and froze. Welcome. The meeting will begin shortly. I laughed nervously. Okay, whoever's doing this, you've got a weird sense of humor, I muttered to myself. But there was no one else in the room. Then the lights dimmed. I froze. My pulse was in my ears. Slowly, the projector flickered on. On the screen appeared a single slide. Large, bold letters spelled, "You've been selected." The voice came next. Calm, precise, mechanical, yet human. "Alex," it said. I spun around. The room was still empty. "Alex," the voice repeated, now emanating from the ceiling speakers. "Welcome to the first step of your promotion." My hands trembled. I didn't sign up for anything," I stammered. "You have no choice," it said. Before I could react, the projector changed. Images flashed on the screen, photographs of my coworkers. Everyone. Some of the images were old, some recent. Each photo showed them seated in room C, eyes wide, expressions frozen in terror. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of movement behind the glass walls made me freeze. Every nerve screamed that I was not imagining this. Suddenly, the door locked. I tried to open it, yanking at the handle until my hands bled. Nothing. The room was no longer just a conference room. The walls seemed to stretch further, the shadows deeper. The projector flashed again. My photo this time, taken from an angle I knew I hadn't been photographed in at work. "You're next," the voice said softly. I fell to my knees, pounding on the glass. The lights flickered, and in that brief moment, I saw a figure outside the room through the reflection on the glass. Tall, thin, featureless, standing completely still, watching me. Then the projector turned off. The room plunged into darkness. I sat there, shaking, listening to my own ragged breaths. After what felt like hours, the lights returned. The projector was back on, but now the slide simply read, "Do not leave before the meeting begins." I spent the next week paranoid. Every time I passed room C, I could swear the lights flickered when I looked away. I avoided late nights, skipped office socials, and constantly checked my calendar. But the booking remained. My name, room C, Thursday, 8 p.m. Finally, Thursday returned. My stomach churned as I walked toward the room. I wanted to skip it, run out the emergency exit, call the police. But some part of me couldn't resist. I had to know. I swiped my badge. Door unlocked. I stepped inside. The room was empty. The door clicked shut behind me. Nothing. I laughed nervously at my own fear. Maybe it was all in my head. Maybe it really was a glitch. Then, the phone on the table buzzed. A notification appeared. I picked it up, and my heart stopped. "Your turn has arrived." The projector flickered on, and there, on the screen, were my coworkers again. Only now, each image flickered, like the photographs themselves were alive. Their expressions changed, mouths opening as if screaming silently. Eyes wide, staring at something behind me. I spun around. Nothing. Then, behind the projector, a shadow detached itself from the wall. The outline of a man appeared. Tall, suit pressed perfectly, expressionless. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling as I fumbled for my phone. My badge did nothing. The door would not open. "You were chosen," the figure said, voice calm, unnervingly familiar. There is no refusal. I ran to the far wall, kicking chairs aside, trying every window, every exit. The figure followed, silent. Suddenly, the images on the projector flickered again. And then, my own face appeared on the screen, eyes wide, frozen in terror. But it wasn't a photograph. It was live. I was staring at myself, as if I were already trapped. A voice whispered behind me, "Step forward." I froze. My mind raced. My throat was dry. I knew instinctively that this was the end of the line. Not in a physical sense, at least not yet, but in every other sense that mattered. My life, as I knew it, would be rewritten in this room. I bolted to the door, slammed against it one last time. And in that instant, the lights went out completely. When they flickered back on, the room was empty. No projector, no shadow, no images. The door was unlocked. My phone was on the table. Nothing else. I didn't stay to investigate. I ran out, never looking back. Weeks later, I learned that Room C was perpetually booked. Always. By E. Wallace, a founder who died decades ago. Employees who entered late meetings for promotions never returned to their desks. HR brushed it off as retirements or transfers. But I knew the truth. I never returned to that office. I changed careers, moved to a different city, and every Thursday at 8 p.m., I check my phone compulsively. Every so often, a notification appears from an unknown calendar. Your turn is coming. Sometimes the scariest part isn't what happened. It's knowing that it could happen again. People like that don't need a reason. They just need an opportunity. And if you're unlucky enough, they will find your name on the next agenda. Even now, years later, I can still feel the shadow of that room following me. And I know somewhere that Room C is still booking itself. Waiting. Watching. If your gut ever tells you something is wrong at work, listen. It might be the only thing keeping you alive. Story 8. Have you ever felt a drawer watching you? I don't mean figuratively, like your boss glances over your shoulder. I mean literally, a drawer in your desk that waits, silent, like it knows things you don't, and sometimes whispers. That's what happened to me. And it's the thing I can't stop thinking about. My name's Rachel Moore. I was 26 at the time, living in a small flat above a convenience store in East London. I worked as an office assistant for a mid-sized legal firm called Harrow & Finch. Nothing glamorous. Just files, invoices, client calls, and the occasional late-night overtime when deadlines hit. My life was ordinary, boring even. I liked it that way. The predictable routine made me feel safe. Our office was nothing special. Gray carpeting that had seen too many coffee spills, fluorescent lights buzzing faintly, and tall filing cabinets that smelled faintly of metal and dust. My desk was at the back corner near the storage closet. A standard desk, really, but with one drawer I rarely used. A small, locked one that belonged to the previous assistant. The key was missing, and everyone assumed it was full of old papers or something no one cared about. It started one late Wednesday night. I was the only one left in the office, sipping stale coffee and trying to finish scanning a batch of contracts before the weekend. The rain pattered on the windows, and the building's old pipes groaned as if complaining about the cold. I was half dozing when I heard it, a whisper. "Open me." I jolted upright, spilling a little coffee on the scanner. My heart raced. I looked around the empty office. Nothing. Just the fluorescent lights flickering slightly and the hum of the air conditioning. Did anyone say that? I asked out loud, my voice cracking. Silence. I told myself I was tired. I'd been working 12-hour days for 2 weeks straight. Maybe I imagined it, but then I heard it again, closer this time. "Open me, Rachel." My breath caught. I froze. My eyes drifted to the locked drawer in my desk. I hadn't even thought about it for months. My hands shook slightly as I leaned forward, staring at it. The whispers didn't sound angry, just insistent. Polite, almost like someone was asking nicely. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself it couldn't be real. But curiosity gnawed at me, a small, insistent itch I couldn't ignore. I rummaged through the top drawer, the one I used daily, searching for a paper clip or a hairpin, anything to pick the lock. My pulse was loud in my ears. My hands trembled. Click. The lock gave way. The drawer opened with a faint creak. Inside was a narrow stack of manila folders, all yellowed and dusty. The top folder had my name written on it in neat, looping handwriting, Rachel Moore. I froze. I had never seen this folder before. I pulled it out, and as I did, I thought I heard the whisper again. Look deeper. Inside the folder were documents, files, memos, but not the kind I'd expect. Each sheet had a date. Years and years, going back decades. Names of people I didn't know. Employees, apparently, but many I recognized from old office photos I'd seen tucked into frames in the hallway. But here's the thing, some of them shouldn't exist anymore. Some had left the company long before I was even born. I flipped through one folder and found a tiny photograph. It was a group shot, probably from the 70s, taken outside the building. Dozens of people lined up, smiling at the camera, and there, front and center, was a man, pale, thin, with a neat dark suit and piercing blue eyes. His smile was polite, familiar somehow. "Martin," the whisper said. I froze again. My heart sank into my stomach. I didn't know anyone named Martin. Not anyone in my lifetime at this office. I put the photo down and kept flipping. More names, more photos. Each folder had something: an employee, smiling, working at a desk, standing outside in the sunlight, all recorded in meticulous detail. There were handwritten notes in the margins, dates of hire, notes about personality, habits, even mistakes. Some of the notes read like instructions. Small, almost imperceptible nudges. Guide them, observe, do not forget. And then, in the same delicate handwriting, asterisk, train her first. Asterisk. The whisper was louder now, insistent, echoing inside my skull rather than from the drawer. You were meant to be trained first. I snapped the drawer shut. My hands were shaking so badly that I knocked over my coffee mug, spilling liquid across the papers I was still holding. My pulse was hammering in my ears. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the storage closet made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. I wanted to leave. I wanted to run out of the office and never come back. But the drawer, it called to me again. Quietly. Open me. I couldn't resist. I slid it open once more carefully this time. The bottom of the drawer wasn't solid. There was a thin panel like a false bottom. I pushed at it, and it shifted, revealing a narrow hatch. Faint musty air escaped from the gap. The whisper came from below. "Come down." I stared at the hatch. My rational mind screamed at me. Crawl space. Probably dangerous. Who knows what's down there? But another part of me, the part that had been watching the drawer all these weeks without touching it, leaned forward. The drawer had been waiting, watching, instructing, and now it had opened itself to me. I got on my hands and knees, peering into the darkness. The smell of damp and dust hit me. I could barely see anything, just faint shapes. The whisper guided me. Asterisk, see what's been left behind. See what you will become. Asterisk. My heart was in my throat, but I climbed down. The crawl space was narrow, but not impossibly so. Dusty floorboards creaked beneath me. I could hear the whisper again, now forming words. Asterisk, look at them. Learn. Remember. Asterisk. And then I saw them. Rows of filing cabinets, shelves, makeshift cubicles, all crammed into this hidden space. And in each, someone sat or knelt at a desk. Their eyes were blank. Faces pale, expressionless, staring at papers in front of them. As I stepped closer, I realized they weren't alive. Or at least not fully. They were trapped in some sort of limbo, recorded there, listening, obeying, silent. One of the whispers came right behind me. "They are waiting for you." I spun around. No one. Only the rows and rows of desks, faces, bodies, and empty chairs. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But the whisper persisted. Asterisk, your training begins. You were meant to be first. Asterisk. And then I saw him. Martin. The same man from the photograph. Standing at the far end of the crawl space, tall, thin, perfectly still. His blue eyes seemed to bore into me, calm, patient, and impossibly alive. He smiled, not wide, not friendly, just present. And when he moved, It was perfectly silent. "You're next," he said. I stumbled back, my hands trembling. "No, I don't belong here." "Oh, but you do," the whisper said. The drawer rattled above me. "Everyone belongs, eventually." I bolted, hands scraping against dusty floorboards, knees hitting the splinters. I climbed back into the office, my clothes torn, dust in my hair and eyes. The drawer slammed shut behind me with a definitive click. My chest heaving, I realized I was alone again. But for how long? I tried to tell my manager, tried to explain what I had seen, but she just looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "Rachel, you're overworked. Go home. Get some rest." I did. I went home, but the whispers followed. Not aloud, but in my mind. Names, instructions, memories that weren't mine. I dreamt of the crawl space every night, Martin standing at the end, waiting. Every so often, I'd wake to find the locked drawer slightly open at home, though I had no desk with a drawer. I don't know how that's possible. Months later, I quit. I moved. I tried to forget. I tried to convince myself it had been a hallucination, stress, exhaustion. But every now and then, when I see a desk with a locked drawer, or hear a faint whisper in a silent office, I remember the crawl space. I remember the rows of trapped employees waiting, watching, and I know somewhere Martin is still standing at the end, smiling, patient, and calm. I don't go near drawers anymore. I don't touch locks I don't have the key for, and I've stopped working late nights in offices. Sometimes the scariest part isn't what happened. It's knowing that it could happen again, that a drawer, a desk, or a hidden crawl space somewhere else is waiting, and it's watching, and it knows your name, because some training never ends, and sometimes you were meant to be trained first. I still hear the whispers,